Now part of the Darkcast Network. Welcome to Indie Podcasts with a Dark Side. On June 15th, 1984, 15-year-old Reesa Dawn Trexler was found dead in a spare bedroom inside her grandparents' home in Salisbury, North Carolina. Reesa's grandfather, Walter Monroe, had come home from the grocery store and found his granddaughter dead inside the house. His scream sent Reesa's 13-year-old sister, Jodie Trexler Laird, running next door. Welcome, lambs. Welcome to Love and Murder, Heartbreak to Homicide, your weekly true crime podcast telling you cases of relationships that turn to murder. I am your host, Kai, and in today's case, it's not your normal type of case, but the more you listen, you'll see why I'm bringing this forward. Before we begin, guess what? I was monetized on Facebook. So if you can't join the Patreon, patreon.com/Love and Murder, at one of our bonus tiers, then you can still support Love and Murder by going to the Facebook, following me on Facebook, and simply watching the videos that I put out there. I do have new cases out there. It's just short episodes like 1-minute videos, 1.5-minute videos. But if you can go ahead and go over to the Facebook, the link is in the show notes below. Go ahead and just engage on that page, watch the video, share, like, comment, whatever. Then that will also help Love and Murder out. And that's completely free for you, but watching it helps me out. You can search Love and Murder, Heartbreak to Homicide podcast in Facebook, or you can simply click on the link that is in the show notes below. Either way, that is a new free way to help out this podcast. However, if you do want to get bonus episodes, case extras, and become part of the Lamb Fam, then you can still do that over at the Patreon, patreon.com/Love and Murder. Bonus episodes start at the $3 tier and above. Now that we got the housekeeping out of the way, let's get back to this case of Love and Murder. Reesa had been born on October 11th, 1968, to her mother, Vicki Oakes. She and Jodie were close growing up. They shared a room, lived next door to their grandparents, and spent a lot of time together. By the summer of 1984, Reesa was 15 years old and spending her break hanging out with friends like most teenagers do. That day started out normally. Reesa had invited 2 friends, Paul Rogers and a boy named Jim, over to watch TV and hang out. At the time, the only people home were Reesa, Jodie, and the 2 boys. Eventually, Paul and Jim left to run errands. But not long after they left, Jodie went looking for Reesa, but couldn't find her anywhere inside the house. Thinking Reesa may have gone over to their grandparents' house next door, Jodie walked outside and noticed their grandfather's car and truck were gone. Their grandmother was also away at the hairdresser. Since it wasn't unusual for Reesa to leave with one of their grandparents, Jodie assumed that's what happened and went back home. A short time later, Walter Monroe came home from the grocery store, and that's when Jodie heard the scream. Now, can you imagine being 13 years old and hearing the scream coming from your grandfather of all people? Like, that's probably a sound she'll never forget for the rest of her life. Jodie ran next door and found Reesa inside the front spare bedroom, naked and covered in blood. When police arrived, they found a brutal scene. Reesa had been stabbed 18 times across her neck and upper chest. One of the wounds was so severe that it completely severed her spinal cord. During the autopsy 2 days later, investigators discovered that part of the steel blade from the murder weapon was still lodged in her right shoulder. Dr. John Butts performed the autopsy on June 17, 1984. During that examination, he carefully collected fingerprints, DNA swabs, and the sexual assault kit. Semen was found in and on Reesa's body. At the time, DNA technology was still in its early stages, but the evidence was preserved. The investigation moved quickly at first. Police repeatedly interviewed Paul Rogers and Jim because, they were among the last people known to have seen Reesa alive. But investigators could never connect either of them to the murder. Witnesses also reported seeing a black male running in the area around the time of the homicide. Investigators recovered what was described as an, quote, African-American hair, from the body. Still, despite those leads, the case stalled. And when investigators didn't have a suspect, suspicion started turning inward. For years, rumors circulated that Jodie may have been involved in her sister's death. Part of that came from the fact that she was next door during the attack. Over time, those rumors spread through the community and even into parts of the family's life. Jodie spent decades living under that cloud. And as social media grew around 2010, those accusations followed her online too. People discussed the case publicly and continued pointing fingers at her, despite there never being any evidence tying her to the murder. Now, some people are just pure mean. I mean, there is literally zero evidence that she was involved, and her sister was her best friend. Why would you just start accusing her of something? Some people just love to decide someone's guilty just because they were nearby or because they acted weird after trauma. Like, keep in mind that this girl was 13 years old and had just lost her sister in one of the most violent ways imaginable. How would you like it if that were done to you? Throughout a horrific time in your life, people just piled on you and told you it was all your fault. And for decades, people did this to you. How would you like it? Sometimes people just need to stop and think, would I like this done to me? Maybe ask yourself that question before you do something to somebody. Would I like this done to me? By that point, the murder had become a cold case. Then in March 2018, Salisbury Police Sergeant Travis Schulenberger officially reopened the investigation. The following month, Jodie appeared on an episode of Dr. Phil titled Suspicious Minds. She took a polygraph test on national television and passed. According to investigators, the appearance sparked new interest in the case. Jodie later took another polygraph test in the presence of police officials and passed that one too. Around that same time, the investigation partnered with Parabon Nanolabs in Virginia to re-examine the DNA evidence collected back in 1984. Now, I do like that the cops in this case did their due diligence as much as they could, collecting samples and keeping them well preserved. Good job. Like, sometimes we're questioning what's going on with the, police force in a certain case, but in this case, definitely good job. Scientists used genetic genealogy to create a profile from the semen recovered at the crime scene. From there, they started building family trees using public databases, newspaper archives, obituaries, and public records. Chief genetic genealogist C.C. Moore later described the technology as a game changer. By that point, genetic genealogy had already helped identify about 100 suspects in cold cases since the Golden State Killer case in 2018. Forensic genealogy is one of the most fascinating things to happen to cold cases. Think about it. People who thought they got away with something 30 or 40 years ago are suddenly getting identified through relatives who probably have no idea they're helping solve a homicide. In the end, the investigation eventually led police to Curtis Edward Blair. Now, who is this random name that hasn't been mentioned since the beginning of this case, you ask? Well, Curtis had been in his 40s at the time of the murder and worked at a Frito-Lay factory located just blocks from the Trexler home. Investigators also learned that he had a lengthy criminal history that included arrests in New York and California, along with a conviction for assault with a deadly weapon. But by the time the investigators identified him, Curtis was already dead. While some earlier reports suggested he died in 2007, his death certificate confirmed that he died in August 2004 in California from acute ventricular failure and congestive heart failure. And that's why the case remained cold for so long. Curtis had no connection at all to the Trexler or Monroe families. While leads like the witness reports and the recovered hair existed in 1984, they could not be definitively linked to a specific individual until the advent of genetic genealogy in 2019. In June 2019, authorities obtained a court order to exhume his body from City Memorial Park in Salisbury. His remains were then transported to Lyerly Funeral Home so investigators could collect DNA evidence before he was reinterred. Then, in August 2019, the North Carolina State Crime Lab confirmed the DNA from Curtis's remains were a perfect match to the evidence collected from Reesa's body in 1984. Pause here because I know some people are going to message me and say I said something wrong. So when I said that they couldn't definitively link somebody until the genealogy test in 2019, the way I said it sounded like I was saying the genealogy test was invented in 2019, but I was saying that the use of the genealogy test for this case happened in 2019. Just had to pause there because I could have just pictured the slew of comments I was about to get. So thank you. Back to the episode. So on December 3rd, 2019, officials held a press conference announcing that the case had officially been solved. Because Curtis was dead, of course, there would never be an arrest, trial, or sentencing, but investigators publicly stated that Jodie had been, quote, completely exonerated, which she shouldn't have even been a suspect in anybody's mind in the first place. For the family, the announcement brought relief, but it also came after 35 years of grief, suspicions, and unanswered questions. I just want to point out that the resolution of this case was a collaborative success between the Salisbury Police Department, the State Bureau of Investigation, and Parabon Nanolabs. Jodie said, quote, I just want to say how thrilled me and my family are. It's been a long road, something that honestly, for many, many years, we didn't think would happen. She also said, quote, 35 years is a long time, and we're just as happy as we could possibly be. I know that we'll never get all of the answers that we want, but at least we have the answers that we need. And after spending decades with people questioning her, she added, quote, I think we can walk down the street and look at people a lot differently now. And that statement just tells you how heavy those accusations were for her all those years. Reesa's mother, Vicky, admitted that there was a time she believed the case would never be solved. Quote, so many nights laying in the bed wondering and wondering and wondering, and maybe now I could sleep. Sergeant Schulenberger later credited the original investigators, especially Sergeant Jim Hurley, for preserving the evidence so carefully back in 1994. Quote, those guys made all of this possible. Now, nothing brought Reesa back, but after 35 years, the evidence finally answered the question of who killed her, and just as importantly, who didn't. Now, like I said in the beginning, this case isn't what we normally focus on, as no one in the family or friends was actually the killer, but for decades, people believed it was the cousin who did this. This is why I wanted to bring this case to light. It's something that is as important, who didn't do it as who did it. You don't want to just randomly accuse people saying they did a crime with literally no evidence. I remember there were some cases earlier, I can't remember, I think season 3, season 4, that was happening in real time. And people wanted me to talk about it, but I had nothing to say on it because enough evidence wasn't gathered. I don't speculate. And until police say, like, this person is guilty for XYZ, I'm not doing an episode. And sure enough, I remember one of them, I think it was the girl had said her baby was stolen or something like that. And she was crying and she ran down to somebody's house and everybody was like, oh, why aren't they doing anything for her? It's because this and that. And I was like, to me, it seemed kind of suspicious. So I had my thoughts, but nothing had come out yet. And so I wasn't sharing my thoughts with the public. To me, it was just kind of suspicious. But, maybe it's just because I do true crime that I just have a suspicious mind. I don't know. So I just shut up and listened. And sure enough, everything came out after I couldn't even tell you how many true crime people had come out saying that she was innocent. I can't believe nobody's taking this seriously. Like, when I tell you, almost every single one of the true crime people I knew came out and said that. Almost everyone. I'm not saying everyone. And then I think a week later or 2 weeks later, something like that, it turns out that all of their speculations were wrong. And the girl had fabricated the whole thing. And I was like, that's why I didn't come out and say anything. So it's the same. Jodie had no evidence against her. Can you imagine just like your sister being, or your sibling being taken away from you and everybody's like, yeah, you did it. It was you. It was you. Like, just imagine that. Like, you have to deal with your sister being gone, deal with that heartbreak, plus deal with the heartbreak of people thinking it's you for 35 years. Exactly. So that's why I wanted to bring this case to light. That was not fair to Jodie whatsoever. But what are your thoughts on this case? Let me know them in the comments below. And don't forget, like I said, I am monetized on Facebook now. Yay! So another way you can help me out is by simply going to Love and Murder's Facebook page and just interacting with the videos I put out. Like, share, comment, and that's all you have to do. Literally all you have to do. And this is Facebook. So on Facebook, you could search Love and Murder, Heartbreak to Homicide. Make sure you have Love and Murder, Heartbreak to Homicide. I do have short videos on there so you can hear my voice, and just like, share, comment, engage. Just engage, and that's all you have to do. That'll help me out greatly. But if you do want to be part of the Lamb Fam, then head on over to the Patreon, patreon.com/Love and Murder. You can join at the $3 tier or above to get case extras, after shows, like I'm about to have an after show right after this episode, and it's at the $3 tier and above in the Patreon. Bonus episodes and so much more over in the Patreon. Just join at the $3 tier or above, and you will get, basically, just read the description to see what you get with each tier. Patreon.com/Love and Murder. That is all I have for you for today's episode. As I end each episode, I want to remind you that it's, say it with me now, all love and no murder, y'all. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you in the after show, actually. Bye. Welcome, lambs. Welcome to your after show. So if you're not part of the Lamb Fam, you will hear the beginning of this after show. But if you want to hear the full episode, then join us at the $3 tier or above over on the Patreon, patreon.com/Love and Murder. Let's get into your after show. On the morning of October 31st, 2025, at around 7:50 a.m., a woman named Alyssa Castro and her boyfriend were sitting in their car. All of a sudden, a woman came out of a nearby home, covered in blood. Alyssa described the scene as horrifying, saying, quote, "There was a woman who approached our vehicle with blood, like her hands were filled, her body was filled with blood, asking to call 911. Now you know the drill. For the rest of the episode, join the Patreon at the $3 tier or above, patreon.com/Love and Murder. Look forward to seeing you as part of the Lamb Fam. Bye.